4 disturbing true high school horror stories taken from Reddit. Have you ever heard of high school horror stories that will keep you up at night? Well, you are in the right place. Today we're bringing you some of the most chilling true stories from Reddit that will make your hair stand on end.
Are you ready to delve into the dark and creepy world of high school horror stories?
If so, then stick around, because you are in for a terrifying ride. Story number 1. Our first story takes us to a small high school in the suburbs, where a group of friends decided to explore an old abandoned basement. They'd heard rumours of strange noises and eerie whispers coming from down there, but they were very determined to uncover the truth themselves. As they descended the stairs, the darkness seemed to engulf them. The only source of light was the flashlight of one of the students, and it barely illuminated their path. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, they were surprised to find a narrow hallway with several doors leading to different rooms. They cautiously opened each door, peering inside and listening for any unusual sounds. Nothing, though, seemed out of the ordinary. They were just about to give up when they heard a faint whisper coming from one of the rooms. Curiosity got the better of them. They slowly opened the door to find a small room with a single desk and a chair. On the desk was a dusty old book with strange symbols etched into its cover. They picked up the book, and the whispering grew louder. And suddenly, the door slammed shut. Panic set in as they tried to open the door, but it was locked from the outside. They were trapped. The whispering turned into a blood-curdling scream. They could hear footsteps approaching from the other side of the door. The students huddled together in fear, wondering what on earth was going to happen next. Suddenly, the screaming stopped, and the footsteps went. The door creaked open, and they were able to escape. When they reached the classroom, they realized that one of their friends was missing. They searched the entire school, but she was nowhere to be found. Rumors began to circulate that the girl had been taken by the ghost that haunted the basement. Some said that the ghost was the spirit of a former student who had died under mysterious circumstances. Others believed that it was the ghost of a janitor who had died on the job. No one knew for sure. The school board decided to close down the basement and seal it off, but the whispers and eerie noises continued to haunt the students and staff for years to come. To this day, no one knows what really happened that night in that small high school in the suburbs. Story number 2. Next, we have a chilling story about a high school teacher who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. According to the rumor mill, the teacher was working late one night when she heard strange noises coming from the empty classroom next door. Curiosity got the better of her and she went to investigate. As she entered the empty classroom, the door suddenly slammed behind her, trapping her inside. She frantically tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. She then noticed a strange symbol etched onto the chalkboard, something she had never seen before. It was surrounded by candles that flickered ominously in the dimly lit room. The teacher started to feel very uneasy and feared for her life. Suddenly, she heard footsteps coming closer and closer. Terrified, she screamed for help. No one came to her rescue. The footsteps grew louder and louder, and they stopped right outside the door. The next day, when the school staff realized that the teacher had not returned home, they called the police. They conducted a search of the entire school, but the teacher was nowhere to be found. The only thing they found was the strange symbol on the chalkboard. Rumors spread like wildfire about what had happened to that teacher. Some students claimed that they saw her ghostly figure wandering the halls at night, while others believed that she was abducted by aliens. The truth, though, was far more sinister. Years later, the group of students exploring the abandoned school stumbled upon a hidden room in the basement. Inside, they found the teacher's remains, along with a diary that detailed her horrifying experience. It turned out that the strange symbol was a portal to another dimension, and the teacher had unwittingly opened it when she entered the classroom. She was sucked into the portal and was never seen again. To this day, no one knows who or what was responsible for the teacher's disappearance. Some believe it was a supernatural force, while others speculate that it was the work of a deranged student or staff member. But the strange symbol etched onto the chalkboard remains as a haunting reminder of the dark and twisted history of the high school. Story number 3. Our third story takes place in a high school in the countryside, where a group of students decided to sneak into the school after hours to explore. They thought it would be exciting to have the entire school to themselves, but they soon realized they were not alone. As they wandered through the empty hallways, they began to hear strange noises coming from one of the classrooms. Curiosity got the better of them. They peeked inside and saw something that made their blood run cold. The room was filled with dolls, all of them arranged in a circle facing the center of the room. The dolls looked like they'd been there for years. Hair was tangled and their clothes ragged. What was even more disturbing was the fact that the dolls seemed to be moving on their own. They swayed back and forth, as if they were being controlled by an unseen force. The students were frozen in fear, unable to move. Suddenly they heard a creaking sound behind them, and when they turned around, they saw an old woman standing in the doorway. She had a menacing grin on her face, and her eyes seemed to pierce right through them. Without a word, the old woman walked slowly towards them, her hand outstretched. The students tried to run, but they found that their feet had become glued to the floor. They were trapped, and the old woman was getting closer and closer. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the old woman stopped in her tracks and let out a piercing scream. The dolls in the room began to move even more violently, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. The students were finally able to break free, and they ran out of the school as fast as they could. From that day on, the students avoided the school after hours, and the legend of the haunted doll room became one of the most terrifying high school stories of all time. To this day, no one knows who the old woman was or where the dolls came from, but the memory of that fateful night still sends shivers down the spines of those who were there to witness it. And the last story, our final story, takes us into a high school in the city, where the students often talked about the ghost of a former student who had died in a tragic accident. The legend had it that if you went to the bathroom alone and said her name 3 times in front of the mirror, she would appear and drag you to the other side of the bathroom. Many students had tried this, but none had ever reported seeing anything out of the ordinary. One day, a group of students decided to test the legend for themselves. They went into the bathroom, turned off the lights, and said the girl's name 3 times. But just as they were about to leave, they turned on the lights and saw something they did not expect. The ghostly figure of the girl was standing right beside them, with a look of pure evil in her eyes. She reached out and tried to grab them, but they managed to escape. They ran out of the bathroom screaming in terror. From that day on, the legend became more than just a story. Students reported seeing the ghostly figure of the girl in the halls, and some even claimed that she spoke to them. Teachers and staff dismissed these reports as mere superstition, but the students knew better. They were convinced that the ghost of the former student had returned to haunt the school. As the years went by, the legend became more and more ingrained in the school's culture. Students would dare each other to try and summon the ghost of the girl, but few were brave enough to go through with it. The bathroom where the ghost had been sighted was eventually closed off, and the legend faded into obscurity. Some students, though, still believe that the ghost of the former student is watching over the school and that her spirit still haunts the halls. They say that if you listen carefully, you can still hear her whispers in dark corners of the school, calling out for someone to join her on the other side. Whether or not the legend is true remains a mystery, but for those who experience the ghostly figure of the girl, it is forever etched into their memories as one of the most horrifying, terrifying high school horror stories of all time. In conclusion, these high school horror stories from Reddit are just a small sample of the terrifying and eerie legends that have been passed down from generation to generation. Each story has its own unique twists and turns, but they all have one thing in common. They are sure to send shivers down your spine. From the abandoned basement in the suburbs to the hidden room in the basement and the haunted bathroom in the city, high schools have been the site of some of the most bone-chilling and terrifying experiences. These stories serve as a reminder that the walls of our schools hold secrets that we may never fully understand. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the dark and twisted world of high school horror stories. We hope you enjoyed the tales, or maybe even survived them. We'd love to hear your comments in the section below. Like the video, share it with your friends, and if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell icon to hear the very latest scary stories as we get them.